Hey there, welcome back to the vlog. By now, most people will have some idea of StarLink, or at least its existence. To the average person, this is an array of satellites in space, in orbit around the Earth, and the purpose of this is to bring high-speed, affordable internet to a greater population than what traditional internet systems on land can deliver to those same people. This is the angle that traditional media has so far covered. Some media has also gone a slight step further by saying that after doing residential internet, it's going to do shipping, trucking, and so forth. As you may expect, given that I'm recording this video, there's something a little bit more to it than the average person realizes. Things aren't really as they first appear, and so it's these other angles that I want to cover in this video. To answer the question of what's going on, we need to look at three separate items. At first glance, these don't appear to be connected. However, there are clues that do connect these items together to make them part of a bigger picture. So first of all, we need to cover SpaceX. As we all know, there were the original Falcon rockets that were going up. We saw SpaceX spend a lot of time and effort trying to refine the landing process and trying to make it reliable, trying to make it work with multiple boosters, not just one. Whilst this was going on, SpaceX was refining both its understanding of rocketry and also making plans for something slightly bigger down the road. We were told very early on that there was going to be another larger rocket. Originally it was called the BFR, for Big Falcon rocket. And this rocket eventually gets renamed Starship. And with this Starship rocket, we've seen the same process unfold that we had previously. There have been launches, there have been test flights, there have been crashes, there has been successful landings. And all of this has been done with a slightly different descent technique where the rocket kind of belly flops back into the atmosphere to slow down before finally righting itself and landing on its tail. So whilst this was going on with Starship, the original rockets have been shuttling up and down, launching StarLink satellites. This has not been without controversy. Obviously, a lot of astronomers on the ground suddenly noticed all of these satellites orbiting the Earth. And, to give SpaceX its due, they have been working with various stakeholders to try to reduce the amount of visible interference that was coming back to Earth. However, some radio astronomers are still very upset because this extra noise coming out of the electromagnetic spectrum is still going to affect them. So since the original Starlink satellites went up, SpaceX has revised the configuration of how Starlink is supposed to work. They've changed the orbit, and it's for two reasons. Number one, by having the satellites lower down, there is a lesser latency when using those satellites, but also number two, it means that when a satellite is being decommissioned, it can be pulled into the atmosphere easier where it can just burn up, as opposed to if it was higher up, it could potentially lead to other issues such as the Kessler syndrome. And this is kind of where we start to see the beginnings of the altruistic nature of Starlink. There were a number of other satellite communication companies who objected to this change, and they wrote to the FCC. And Starlink responded to what the FCC was being told with their own case. So you may remember with the original rockets, when they come down to land on one of the automated drone barges, you would see the rocket come into frame, but then basically the cameras would all knock out. And a large part of this was physical vibration with the barge, but also there would be a cutout on some of the cameras on the rocket just before they were coming down, where you could see the barge coming into view, but then they would lose that one as well. And that was normally down to all of the heated plasma around the bottom of the rocket was interfering with the transmission signals. So what they ended up doing was recently they moved, apparently, those transmitters further up the rocket, and that kind of fixed that problem. However, going back to the Starship, they want to do an orbit around the Earth. And one of the things that's going to happen during this is you're going to get a lot of ionized plasma around the rocket, which means getting telemetry data and other information about how the rocket is functioning, or even communicating with the rocket if they need to correct stuff, is going to be virtually impossible because it's in a bubble that cannot be communicated with very easily. And this is where the StarLink system comes in, because SpaceX told the FCC that, they're trying to deal with this ionizing plasma problem. And so it would be really, really great if they could reduce the height of the satellites to allow them basically to talk to Starship. Using the data that they can collect in this manner allows them to basically cut down the R&D time and expense, because they don't have to brute force their way through like they did with the original SpaceX rockets. They now have a lot more infrastructure around the testing program in order to be able to gather that data, make configuration changes, and then relaunch faster. So if you like these videos, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, hit subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.